Hello, welcome. Let's talk about psychology. Today I wanted to take a step back a little bit and really just talk about what psychology is, lay out all of the pieces, what's going on in psychology. Let's do it. The official definition, I think, the definition, it does vary a little bit place to place, but I think this covers it. So the official definition of psychology is the scientific study of the mind, the brain, and behavior. Which isn't all that flashy. It's not all that flashy of a definition. But to me, and I'm biased, to me, psychology is awesome. Because it really is the combination of two already awesome things: people and science. That's just a win. For me, simply a win. I do think, I will say this, my sort of view on psychology is it is kind of the study of like the human experience. And I say that because psychology focuses on like the individual level. So I there's like part of me wants to say like psychology is the study of people, but that's not quite accurate because there are many areas that study people. But psychology does tend to focus on like the individual level. So like what an individual thinks and feels, or how the situation influences the individual, or how an individual might influence others. So in psychology, we do kind of take this focus on the individual level. And so for that reason, I kind of think of psychology as the study of the human experience. But that's just really my take. You certainly may disagree, but that's kind of how I see things. But let's elaborate. Let's elaborate on what psychology is. So psychology is the study of the mind, the brain, and behavior. And these are all very different aspects of the human experience. Psychology is a very broad field with lots of different interests. So even just the mind, the brain, and behavior. Let's look at these separately. And I'm going to go out in order. Starting with behavior. Behavior is just what people do. The actions people take, the behaviors that people do. Psychology studies how people behave. And I tried to think of a good way to sort of like sum up all the behaviors studied in psychology, and it just seemed impossible. But I will give an example, like a classic behavior that has been studied in psychology is conforming. When do people conform? Why do people conform? What might influence when people conform? Things like that. So conforming, that's just a behavior. That's just a thing people do. And psychology studies it. So anything that people do, psychology might be into it. So psychology studies behaviors. But also psychology studies the mind, which is very, very different. So the mind, I think of the mind as like, these are the inner mental processes, like the processing that makes up our inner mental world. And the mind, while sort of like very much part of our individual experience, other people really can't observe it. So things that are part of the mind, our thoughts are very much part of our mental processing. Our memories are part of the mind. Our reasoning or problem solving, that would be part of the mind. Our experience of emotions, that's part of the mind. So all of this is creating like our inner mental world. That's the mind. So psychology studies behaviors, and it studies the mind, and we're really into the brain. We're into the brain too. The brain does relate to behaviors and mental processes a lot of the time, but just speaking for myself, the brain is fascinating. I am simply into it, and that's really all there is to it. So psychology a very broad field. It covers a lot of territory, and there's lots of different like sub areas and specialties, and like what psychologists are into varies wildly person to person. But no matter what psychologists are into, no matter what their area or their focus is, we always use the scientific method to understand, always. So the science component of psychology, I think this is equal in importance to the people aspect of psychology, or the human experience aspect of psychology. The science component, that's what makes us psychology. We are the scientific study of the mind, the brain, and behavior. So the science side of things is not negotiable. And all that means is that we use the scientific method to investigate things. Any questions we have about human behavior, the human experience, we are going to use the scientific method to investigate them. So we are going to ask questions that are testable. We are going to collect data. We are going to draw conclusions from that data. Those conclusions should be reasonable. Other people are going to check those conclusions to make sure they seem reasonable. We're going to use the scientific method, just like all of the sciences. Science is so cool because it has like great safeguards in place to keep things as objective as possible. It really has great safeguards to prevent biases from running the show, essentially. I really do. This is true. I think that the scientific method is brilliantly designed to prevent confirmation bias, which is a very common tendency that we all have to seek evidence that supports beliefs we already have. It's not objective. We don't navigate the world in an objective manner as people. And so I do think that science has these great safeguards in place to prevent biases like that from getting through. And really, we as psychologists, we know how important it is to have these safeguards to keep things as objective as possible, because we study all the biases. We know how pervasive biases are. We know how hard they are to recognize in ourselves. So it's important that these safeguards are in place to prevent those biases from getting through. We basically agree as psychologists, if we're going to objectively understand people, we got to use science. That's going to be our best bet. So that's pretty much what psychology is. Scientific study of the mind, the brain, and behavior. I don't know. I always feel like, and this is based on pure hunch and no evidence at all, but I always feel like there's something for everyone in psychology. It's got to be. It's something in psychology's got to be relatable to everyone. There's so much that we study. There's so many different areas. I feel like something has to be relatable, or at least interesting. And maybe that's my hope. Maybe that's my hope. I will say this. There's tons of cool research. There's tons of cool research in psychology. It really is a great field, and it does very cool things. That's pretty much all I got. Thank you for sticking with it to the end. Feel free to leave any questions or comments. I'd love to hear your thoughts. I'd love to hear what you think about things. My next video, I think it's going to be in 2 weeks. I've been posting videos on Wednesdays, and I'm fine with that. That's a schedule that's been working out for me. So I'm hoping I will post 2 Wednesdays from now. And I'm working on a video on cuteness. I'm really excited. I can't promise it'll pan out. Sometimes things don't, but that's what I hope. So, I hope to see you soon. Thank you for watching, and I hope to see you soon. And that's it.